A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, my family and I went to Chicago. And we were on vacation, and we went there, to see the sights. We ate some deep dish pizza, which was awesome. Jewel convinced me to go on this Ferris wheel, which was horrible. I hate heights. We went on a boat ride. We got to see the Trump Tower in Chicago. That was interesting. Again, this was 10 years ago. So this was long before he was president. We got to see the Beam. It's artwork. And the outside of it's a mirror, as you can see. So that was pretty neat. This is in downtown Chicago. And this is long before the girls, so it's just us and the boys at this time. And one of the things we got to do while we're there is go to the Fields Museum. And this museum, one of the things it's known for is its large collection of dinosaur fossils. And that's what I will be talking with you about tonight, dinosaurs. Even on the outside of the museum, and they move these around all the time, but even on the outside they have exhibits of dinosaur fossils. And again, one of the things this museum is known for, one of its main attractions, is the large amount of dinosaurs they have. Here's a picture of a Spinosaurus. This is larger than a T-Rex. This was one of the largest, if not the largest predators that ever lived. They have something called a titanosaur. It's a long-necked dinosaur. And this one picture here, you can really see the scale of it with these two people walking close to it, just how enormous this animal was. And one of the very important fossils they have at the Fields Museum is their fossil of the T-Rex. Now, I don't know why, but they named this T-Rex Sue. They gave it a last name, Hendrickson, Sue Hendrickson. And according to the paleontologists who studied this fossil, they say this T-Rex died when it was about 28 years old. It was discovered in the year 1990 in South Dakota. And this fossilized skeleton, it is more than 40 feet long. And at its hip, it is 13 feet tall. So you can see from its foot, its hip right there is one of the highest points on it. From the ground to its hip, it's 13 feet tall. And this makes Sue the largest T-Rex specimen that has ever been discovered. There are more than 30 T-Rex skeletons that have been found, and this one in the Fields Museum is the most complete. So in all the world, this is the most intact or complete skeleton there is of a T-Rex. About 90% of the skeleton was found. So again, that's why this is such a special fossil. It is the largest and most intact T-Rex that exists today, as far as we are aware of. And, people often wonder, and we've all seen movies and pictures, how it actually looked with its muscles and skin and everything. But as far as the skeleton is concerned, this is the most accurate representation of what this creature looked like. Because, again, all the bones you see there, 90% of them are the actual fossils. The skull alone, according to the Fields Museum, weighs 600 pounds. So this was an enormous creature. And on the Fields Museum website, they have a whole article written about this. And one of the articles, they say, quote, dating back to the Cretaceous period, about 67 million years ago, this massive predator lived to the upper end of the life expectancy of a T-Rex, about 28 years, end quote. And when we went there, and I got to look at this thing, again, this kind of shows you the size of it. These men are fairly close to it, just how huge it was. When we went to this museum, and I'm just standing there looking at this thing, I imagine what it would be like to encounter this creature if it was still alive today. I mean, it would be absolutely horrifying. I mean, this thing is a monster. And, things which cause us a little bit of horror or scare us, I think they are also sometimes intriguing. And these larger-than-life creatures, some people like the T-Rex, some people like the Triceratops or whatever, but these larger-than-life animals really do capture our imaginations. And tonight, in this sermon, my goal is to remind you, or perhaps persuade you, that it is reasonable to believe dinosaurs and human beings coexisted. That's my main goal in tonight's sermon, that we as human beings at one point in time lived with dinosaurs. We lived at the same time. And this is part one of two more sermons that I will, Lord willing, in the future preach on this topic. And tonight as we consider this, there's 3 points I'd like us to think about. Number 1, the problem. Then number 2, I'd like to offer just one evidence tonight, and that's going to be the meat of tonight's sermon, is focusing just on one evidence, which again I think shows it's reasonable to believe that we coexisted. And then very briefly at the end, I'm going to talk about one small issue regarding the translation of the Bible. So what exactly is the problem when we think about dinosaurs and how people view dinosaurs? Well, those who believe in Darwinian evolution and the timetable that is connected with that belief system, they say that dinosaurs lived long before human beings. They say dinosaurs were alive approximately 70 million years ago, and modern man, Homo sapiens, first appeared in Africa about 300,000 years ago. And so those who believe in this way of thinking claim we never existed together. We never coexisted. That dinosaurs and modern man did not live together. In fact, we are separated by millions of years. Now, as Bible-believing Christians, this view does not match with what the Scriptures teach. Now, if this is a topic that interests you, I would strongly recommend you get this book and read this book called The Dinosaur Delusion. It's published by Apologetics Press. It's co-authored by Eric Lyons and Kyle Butt. When I was a teenager, my local congregation, the Park Street Church of Christ, we had this in our local library, and the preacher at the time recommended I read it, and I did. I had some questions about dinosaurs, and I really enjoyed this book. I think it's a good read, and I purchased it myself just a few years ago to read it again and go over some of it with my kids, so I highly recommend that. If you don't feel like buying a book or spending money on a book, I would strongly recommend anything from Apologetics Press. In case if anyone doesn't know, Apologetics Press is run by faithful men in the Church of Christ, and everything in that book, you can find it piecemeal on their website. And again, if you have internet access, you can read all the articles on their website for free. And if you just search for dinosaurs on their website, there's tons of articles you could look at. Dinosaurs are used to teach evolution. And again, they're very interesting and they capture our imaginations. Virtually anything that our secular society puts out, whether it's a children's book or a movie like Jurassic Park or a scientific article, will say something like 70 million years ago, dinosaurs roamed the earth long before human beings. They'll say something to that effect. And, I grew up, I forget what year Jurassic Park came out, but I remember we had on VHS. That's like old school technology now. And I've probably seen that movie at least a dozen times. It's an awesome movie, but it does teach evolution. I mean, it clearly does. Jesus viewed the book of Genesis as a literal historical document. On one occasion, he said, "From the beginning of creation, God made them male and female," Mark 10, verse 6. And he's talking about male and female human beings here. In this context, he is speaking about marriage. But he clearly says here, from the beginning of creation, human beings existed. And when you take that approach and that view of Genesis and go back and read Genesis, if we existed from the beginning of creation, we existed with everything else that existed from the beginning of creation. that God created the world in 6 days, and that includes all animals, birds, fish, mammals, and reptiles, even large reptiles. If anyone's taking notes, Brady read part of it, but you could jot down Genesis 1, verses 26 through 31. And that text teaches that God created all the land animals, the beasts of the earth, and human beings on the 6th day of creation. So the Bible explicitly teaches that we as human beings have coexisted with all other living creatures, even ones that no longer exist. All right, the dodo bird, the saber-toothed tiger, and yes, dinosaurs. Now, some people will ask, well, does this really matter? You know, if a person wants to believe that the earth is millions of years old and certain creatures have never coexisted, is it really that big of a deal? You know, as long as someone just focuses on the fundamentals of what Jesus said and puts their hope in Him and their salvation in Him, isn't that really all that matters? And I would respectfully disagree with that. No, it's not all that matters. You know, on the surface, that this whole idea of millions and years and all this stuff, it may not seem very important. However, as I just pointed out, Jesus teaches, if we're going to trust in the fundamental teachings of Jesus, Jesus teaches we have existed as human beings from the beginning of creation. And if a person believes in Darwinian evolution and the long periods of time associated with it, and that some animals came into existence and then human beings millions of years after that, this is a denial of what the Scriptures teach. It's a denial of what Jesus teaches. So this is a very significant issue. And I would say, generally speaking, people who believe in Darwinian evolution and that theory and really buy into it, especially if they are very serious about it, I'd say often they end up just rejecting the Bible as a whole. And obviously that's going to affect their salvation if they don't believe anything that the Bible teaches. So with really the most of tonight's sermon, the remainder of the time we have, I'm going to focus on this one evidence. Again, Lord willing, in a future sermon, I'll talk about some other relevant things. And in my opinion, this one is probably the most significant because it's undeniable, I guess. That's how I'd put it, even though people, they still try to deny it in their own way. This is a recent discovery that shows, again, my goal is to try and persuade you that it's reasonable to believe that dinosaurs and humans coexisted. And I think this recent discovery would point to that. And we're going to start with an article from Apologetics Press, as I mentioned. And I strongly recommend anything they've written. And this article, as you can see up on the screen, is titled More Soft Dinosaur Tissue. And this article begins with the following words, and I quote, "Allegedly, no human being has ever seen a live dinosaur. Evolutionary scientists insist that dinosaurs became extinct 60 plus million years ago, while humans evolved approximately 57 million years later. Regardless of ubiquitous ancient stories and artifacts that indicate man once coexisted with dinosaurs, evolutionists continue to put their confidence in assumption-based dating methods, declaring dinosaur fossils to be many millions of years older than man or monkey. More and more evidence is coming to light, however, which casts serious doubt on evolutionists' claims," end quote. And one of the evidences that has come to light is the discovery of soft tissue attached to dinosaur fossils. This discovery is fairly recent. Back in March of 2005, so this is just 20 years ago, paleontologists found soft tissue attached to T-Rex bones or fossils. And some of these fossils aren't fully fossilized, so there's still not only bone, but they have soft tissue attached to them. What do I mean by soft tissue? They have cartilage, blood vessels, and even the remnants of blood cells still attached to these bones they have unearthed. Now, this, again, is an article put out by Apologetics Press, and someone might look at it and say, well, that's biased. This is, Christian propaganda or something like that. Well, here's a picture of an article written by NBC, which of course is not a Christian organization, not interested in defending what the Bible teaches. And notice right below the headline, it shows you pictures of the soft dinosaur tissue that was recently discovered. And so these are actual photos taken by scientists, paleontologists who have discovered this. And the headline of this article reads, "Proteins could reveal new dinosaur secrets." Protein. Where are they getting these proteins? Right? Well, they found bones with protein on them. Right? This soft tissue is attached to them. It looks kind of gross, right? Like gooey raw meat. But, I mean, this is what they found attached to dinosaur fossils. Here's another article published by History.com, like the History Channel. And this headline says, "Scientists find soft tissue and 75 million year old dinosaur bones." So right in the headline, they give you the large spans of time here. Soft tissue, right? This kind of tissue, there's pictures of it, right? Found in 75 million year old dinosaur bones. Now, to try and put this in perspective for you, because, I mean, I don't think we can even fathom, I don't understand 75 million years. I don't know if I could wrap my mind around that. But just to try and put this in perspective for you, the Egyptian pyramids were built about 4,500 years ago. The Great Pyramids of Egypt, they were built about 4,500 years ago. If dinosaurs lived about 70 million years ago, that means their bones have been buried in the dirt 15,000 times longer than the pyramids have existed. So I don't know if that puts things into perspective, but that's how old these bones are and how long they have been in the ground, and not like frozen in ice, in some cases in dry dirt. And we're expected to believe that they still have soft tissue attached to them after all that time. Again, I'd submit for consideration that that's not reasonable. And honestly, I struggle with even thousands of years. How could a creature like that die and be buried even for thousands of years and there still be soft tissue attached to it? You know, maybe something huge like a T-Rex. And again, some of these were T-Rex bones. You know, maybe the how big the creature is affects how it decays, you know. But again, I just don't think it's reasonable to say this thing has existed in the dirt for millions of years and they're still finding remnants of blood in it. From what I've read, paleontologists have discovered several more dinosaur fossils that also have soft tissue attached to them. So this isn't like a one-time fluke. This has been verified. This is a fact. This isn't fake. And it's honestly, I think, flabbergasting to most people who believe in Darwinian evolution, because it's something they really can't explain, even though they still insist that it's millions of years old. Neither NBC or the History Channel asked the obvious question: if these fossils are millions of years old, then how do they still have like cartilage attached to them? Here's one more article written by CBS, and it raises that obvious question, that if dinosaur bones are being found that have soft tissue, again, doesn't that suggest they're much younger than popular opinion would suggest? Well, you aren't allowed to ask those kind of questions. Right? That's too, dare I say, scientific, right? To think that open-mindedly about something like this. So here's an article. This is again written by CBS. You know, NBC, History, CBS. Again, these are not Christian organizations. And this headline says, "Lawsuit: CSUN scientists fired after soft tissue found on dinosaur fossil." So this article speaks about a scientist who worked for the California State University. That's what CSUN stands for. So he was employed by the California State University as a scientist, as a paleontologist. And while he was at an excavation site in Montana, he discovered a Triceratops horn that, lo and behold, it had some soft tissue attached to it. And in this article, it says, and I quote, A discovery, Backus said, stunned members of the school's biology department and even some students because it indicates that dinosaurs roamed the earth only thousands of years in the past rather than going extinct 60 million years ago, end quote. Now, how did the California State University respond to this man and his idea that, well, hey, these must be rather recent. These bones must be rather recent if they still have soft tissue attached to them. Well, they fired him, right? Because, you see, Darwinian evolution, that's the golden cow, the golden calf of our secular world and how it views things. You can't question that or cause any kind of doubt regarding that at all, especially if you're in some kind of scientific profession. So they canned him. So again, how is this explained? And it's really not. From everything I've read, people who stick to their guns that these are millions of years old, they just say, oh, it's a miracle. They're miraculously preserved. We don't know how this is going on, which, again, kind of goes against the whole idea of believing in Darwinian evolution. Again, I think the obvious answer is these dinosaurs were still alive in rather recent history. Again, returning to that Apologetics Press article, the last paragraph says this, and I quote, suggesting that these bones sat around for at least 70 million years in porous sandstone without completely fossilizing or decomposing literally is unbelievable. A much better and more logical explanation is that dinosaurs once lived on Earth in the not-too-distant past, only a few hundred or thousand years ago, not 60-plus million years ago. If soft, flexible, resilient, highly fibrous dinosaur tissue and many different specimens will not convince the gainsayer, what would? End quote. And I like that it ends with that question because more than one set of bones has been unearthed that still has this soft tissue attached to it. And if that's not enough evidence for a person, and there's other things as well, but if that's not enough for a person to at least think about reevaluating their view of Earth's timeline of events and history, then what really will? I mean, I don't know. I mean, unless we find a living dinosaur, like an actual T-Rex or something, I think some people will just never believe. Even then, they'd be like, well, it's a miracle, you know. This creature must be millions and millions of years old. Who knows? But this is just the one thing I'd like to focus on tonight. And again, in future sermons, there's some other, I think, rather relevant information. But, you know, in my opinion, in recent history, this is one of the most interesting, right? You kind of wonder, too, about science fiction becoming science fact. You know, there's recent stories of them trying to clone wolves, extinct wolves, which I think they've actually done. They found woolly mammoths in ice. And they've talked about cloning those and trying to bring those back. You know, Jurassic Park might become a reality if they could find something that could breed with a T-Rex, you know. I don't know what would work, you know, crocodile or something. Who knows? I don't know. So this last point is going to be super short, and then I'll leave the sermon with you tonight. Let me talk just briefly about translation and a question that some people have. You know, if the Bible teaches dinosaurs and humans coexisted, well, then why doesn't the Bible use the word dinosaur? Why does the Bible talk about dinosaurs? Well, the Bible says nothing about kangaroos or pandas or penguins. One of my favorite animals is the sloth. If you ever see a picture of a sloth, it looks like they're always smiling. Just slow, happy creatures. Our friend the sloth is not found in the Bible. You know, there are many things the Bible does not mention because the Bible doesn't mention a lot of things. And again, that doesn't mean ancient people thought they didn't exist or weren't aware of their existence. It just means they're not mentioned in the text of the Bible. Now, concerning the term dinosaur, the word itself was not coined until the year 1841 by a man named Sir Richard Owen. And it's a combination of two Greek words. One is dainos, which means terrible, and the other word is sauros, which means lizard. So you put the words together, you get dinosaur, which literally means terrible lizard. And I think that's a great name for these things. And it stuck. So again, the King James, it wasn't the first translation, but it's one of the most well-known, and it's very old. The King James was first published in the year 1611. And again, the word dinosaur was not coined until the year 1841. So even if the translators would have used that word, it didn't exist when this was first published. Now, I would say, unlike kangaroos, penguins, and the other animals I mentioned, the Bible does describe large reptilian creatures. Not in a lot of verses, but there are a few that do talk about that. And we will examine some of those passages in a future sermon. So again, I do think this is an important topic. We should trust everything the Bible teaches. There are some terrifying creatures that existed in the ancient world in the past. And there's some terrifying creatures that exist today. You know, if we went out for a swim and bumped into a crocodile or a giant squid or wherever we were swimming, I don't think we'd be all that happy, right? I wouldn't be. I don't know about you. And, you know, all of creation declares the glory of God, and we ought to know dinosaurs, even though they're almost unbelievable. You know, probably wouldn't believe they existed if it weren't for their bones. Even dinosaurs are a part of His handiwork. Let us endeavor to have a biblical view of the world, and may we trust in everything Jesus teaches, whether it's His comments about the physical or His comments about the spiritual. May we always trust in Him.